So let's go. I do want to touch on this is really important because then there's this other incredible moment and another example for all of us. And because there's, that dialectic of the specific conditions of a place, and then the fact that when somebody is a truly dynamic, inspiring, visionary leader,
yes,
they're an influence for all of us, no
of
matter
course.
wherever we are, any time, place, or location.
Yes.
Thomas Sankara.
Yeah.
Let's play a clip of this documentary, and then Milton, you're going to lead us through Thomas Sankara.
Okay, very good.
Notre pays
Pause it.
produit.
I'm sorry. I just should say, if you're listening to this on podcast, some of this will be in English. Some of this, he is speaking in French.
Right.
So I would encourage you to just watch this. You won't miss much, to be honest, but
Right.
watch the show of we're doing on YouTube, and also, or listen to the podcast we did on it, or look up this documentary. But just so you know, you'll miss a few lines. Go ahead.
Notre pays produit suffisamment de quoi nous nourrir. Nous pouvons dépasser même notre production, malheureusement. Par manque d'organisation, nous sommes encore obligés de tendre la main pour demander des aides alimentaires. Ces aides alimentaires qui nous bloquent, qui nous inspirent, qui installent dans nos esprits cette habitude, ces réflexes de mendiant, d'assister.
Upper Volta, 1983. Thomas Sankara is brought to power by a coup supported by one of the poorest peoples on our planet. Behind a military uniform and a Marxist discourse, Africa discovers a young and dynamic leader, ready to put his innovative ideas at the service of his fellow citizens. Thomas Sankara gives a new name to his country, Burkina Faso, which means the land of upright men.
Il y en a qui demandent mais où se trouve l'impérialisme. L'impérialisme, regardez dans vos assiettes quand vous mangez les grains de riz, de maïs, de mil importés. C'est ça l'impérialisme. N'allez pas plus loin.
Little by little, Sankara takes his country out of misery, achieves food self-sufficiency, but clashes with the French who want to keep control over their former colonies. Above all, they want to avoid by all means that Sankara's ideas spread throughout the region.
La France ne comprend pas l'Afrique. Et il est grand temps qu'elle la comprenne.
Qui ici ne souhaite pas que la dette soit purement et simplement effacée? Celui qui ne le souhaite pas, il peut sortir, prendre son avion et aller tout de suite à la Banque mondiale, payer. Tous nous souhaitons.
Thomas Sankara is attacked by those in the north as well as in the south who benefit from Africa's underdevelopment. His closest collaborator, Blaise Compaoré, with the support of foreign powers, will betray him. Killed for his ideas, Thomas Sankara has become the African Che in the eyes of African youth today.
Pour le grand combat patriotique, pour l'avenir radieux de notre pays, la patrie ou la mort, nous vaincrons.
Milton, he was an extraordinary figure. Tell us more about him.
Absolutely.
And of course, everything you talked about reflected precisely
Yes.
in his explanation of, if you want to find imperialism, look no further than the plate that you're eating from.
You have imported food, your rice, your corn, your millet imported. How is that possible when you have been growing food for centuries? Think about that. But you've developed this dependency syndrome now as a result of the colonial and then neo-colonial relationship. You even import bottled water from France. Come on, man. Right? Think about that. So it was an awakening, but the issues that the people of Burkina Faso, first of all, he changed the name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, meant land of the righteous people or the upright people or the incorruptible people. So you can translate it a couple of ways.
Where did he come from? Like, where did he come from?
Very good.
He was young.
He was young.
How did he get radicalized?
He was in the military from a very young age, but he was teaching himself as well. He understood history because he read history books. He understood economics because he read the so-called neoclassical, but he also read Marxist economics. So he understood the motion of history, understood the issues. Not only was he a charismatic young officer like Jerry Rawlings, for example, was in Ghana.
Ghana.
Right.
Got it.
He seized power in '83. Initially, started off by executing those generals that had gotten rid of Nkrumah. So there was a question of would he be able to stabilize things, but he actually did. But Sankara had a higher level of consciousness. He was much more read when it comes to understanding global economics and the details behind it. Rawlings did. He understood Africa's role in the global economy as providers of raw material, of labor, and as consumers of manufactured goods. So he knew that part. But I think Sankara had a much more detailed knowledge. He could have taught political economy.
Oh, he would have been a very popular professor.
Yeah, think about that.
Keeping it down to earth like that too, though. So what did he? I see that with all of these great articulators.
Right.
They bring it home like that.
Yeah.
So how he took over the country? How many years did he run it for, and what did he achieve? And then Blaise Compaoré portrayed him.
Yeah,
What's
Blaise
the story?
Compaoré was actually his closest friend at some point. In fact, he was under house arrest when Blaise Compaoré launched the coup to free him and then said, listen, you are our leader. And that's how he became the president in the first place. And he only lasted 4 years.
So what were those years? 79 to
83 to 87.
83 to 87. He ran. And what did he
But
achieve?
in the short time,
Yes.
he just unleashed a level of pride, consciousness, and ambition that the country had never seen before. He empowered women, for example. He didn't give them just these token jobs. He actually gave them real jobs like officials in the government, ministers in the government. He recruited them in the military, had them trained, and joined the army as weapons. That had never been seen before in West Africa. He had one day, and then the documentary that you played bits of has a lot of some of the details. So I strongly recommend it as well. On Women's Day, he said the men should go out and shop today so they understand, how women have been able to keep them alive with the little money that they provide to them. He empowered the youth, and he changed the relationship between young men and young women. Said, how is it possible that you, a young boy in high school, you can impregnate a young lady, and the lady is the one that gets expelled from school while you stay on like you had nothing to do with it. Right. So he changed the thought process in the entire country, but he also had concrete things that you could point to, like the food sufficiency. Within 3 years, the country became food sufficient. The country built its first rail line that was domestically built with domestic resources without getting a loan for it because everybody rolled up their sleeves, including he himself. And he went to some of the urban areas that had these ramshackle buildings. And he said, why are you living in these when you can actually make solid buildings that also look good? And nobody had told people that this is what you should do. They did that. He was way ahead when it came to environmentalism, got people to plant 10 million trees, rather. He said, this desertification that's creeping up and eating up our country, you can actually stop this. You can play an agent in stopping this. You don't have to just be a victim and see it eating up your farm, your farmland shrinking. And so people, not only did they listen to him, but they participated in taking control of their lives. He got schools built in every community in the country. He got health centers built in every community in the country. And you played the part in the clip where he spoke to the other African presidents at the Organization of African Unity meeting in Addis Ababa. That was July 1987. And you heard the reaction of the other African presidents.
He was saying what they all wanted to say.
All what they wanted to say, but could not dare say.
Right.
We just have to collectively renounce this debt, because not many people know this. In some cases, African countries inherited these debts at the time of independence. That's why I keep telling you, independence is fiction. How could you say, okay, now we are bringing colonial regime to an end. You are the new leadership in Africa now. But by the way, while we were running this country as a colony for the last 70, 80 years or so, we incurred debt that you will now have to assume responsibility for. So he said, we can't continue this relationship because we would have no resources to build up our own economies. But we can't do it individually. He said, if I do it alone, as Thomas Sankara, I won't be here for the next annual meeting of the Organization of African Unity. That was July 1987. October, he was dead, 1987.
So, and just to be clear, and listen back to the podcast and watch the documentary, because I want to move forward in the last couple of minutes before we get to the post game. But portrayed by Blaise Compaoré,
Yes.
with the direct support of the French government,
and Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast.
and Ivory Coast.
Yeah,
and
because Côte d'Ivoire is the ultimate neo-colony
right.
of neo-colonies in Africa, of France. And at that time, Houphouët-Boigny was very close to France. In fact, I don't know whether he considered himself French or Ivoirian. Was given the dirty job to convince Blaise to get rid of Sankara, because the example that Sankara was setting was spreading in West Africa, was spreading throughout the African continent, and that was a bad example. And then also, Houphouët-Boigny and his country, Ivory Coast, had a direct potential of losing too, because many of the farm workers who work in the cocoa fields in the Ivory Coast are migrant workers from Burkina Faso. And Sankara was saying, no, you can actually be involved in agriculture in your own country now. We'll be growing our own food for ourselves and for export. There's no need for you to be an exploited worker now in the Ivory Coast. So Houphouët-Boigny and Ivory Coast also had a direct interest in getting Sankara eliminated.
You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.